Hello and welcome to another episode of The Modern Nerd. I am Sir Slice,
I'm Merchandise.
I'm GJC.
and we are, as always, massive nerds. Now, I really had to bring my hands in here to do my trademark symbol because we are in a new format,
What?
ladies
No,
and
you should
gentlemen.
do it where you put your hands out like this, and then me and Dan pretend we're your hands like this, like massive nerds. Yeah, you
Oh,
get your other hand up. There you
we'll
go.
practice that for
Yeah,
next time.
Dan loves the.
It's been a few weeks since we've last come to you guys with something. So make sure to check out those other episodes that we got up there. Before we get into our Antman and the Wasp Quantumania, God, that's a mouthful.
Oh man.
Review. I will say, as always, thank you. We love having anyone who's watching watch the show. We appreciate you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Dan, for joining me on this long, crazy journey of my. Most of this was just my brainchild, and anybody who knows my brain knows that it goes in every direction. So each week, it's what the hell are we doing? And suddenly, we're doing this. So, thank you guys for bearing with me these last couple of years here. Uh, I believe we all have seen this within the last 48 hours. I watched this Quantumania on Saturday. You guys watched it yesterday, which would be Sunday at time of recording. So this is all fairly fresh in our minds, and here we go. Quantumania. Dan, what are your overall thoughts and or views of said Scott Lang production?
It's good. One of the one of the few consistent trilogies, front to back.
It makes me
It
happy
didn't.
hearing you say
It
that.
it didn't totally blow me away, but it also did what it needed to do, and you introduced you to the next big bad, sort of. I think
Which we'll get into.
a lot of questions left unanswered, mostly, which is a good thing, which I like. And it was definitely off to the races from front to back. Like there was no time to chill, which I guess I actually have a complaint about before, but it didn't feel wrong at any point. It they did what it needed to do, and it feels like kind of feels like a good Marvel movie, and that was good. That was a good experience.
George?
Just in general, yeah. I mean, I think it feels like a little bit of the payoff for going through all of the last phase, kind of like you're kind of like, dude, that thing. You remember that thing that they first introduced to us at the beginning of Phase 4? Well, it finally came back around at the beginning of Phase 5. So it just like, in a way, it feels like we kind of been waiting for that. Like a lot of it, which is like, okay, what's our next big step? And that's always been the complaint with the last phase is like it seemed directionless, despite having such a great opening, kind of.
Yeah. I would agree with majority of everything you guys said. I really liked this movie, and probably more than I would have because I saw, like, we talked about them, the last like two big trailers, the first two trailers, and then I kind of stopped watching anything and kind of brought my expectations down real low, just because as we've discussed previously about these Marvel movies, we've been really hyped for this last phase and always let down. So I kind of just was like, hey, I'm gonna go into this like, it's a movie, and we're gonna see how it goes. And it delivered for me. It delivered on all fronts. Can we pick it apart? Sure. Will we? Most definitely. But I did leave the theater going, finally watched a Marvel movie in the last 2 years. Like it some of them were fine in the past, but like this, I know we've complained about like the Marvel formula, but like it works. That's why it's a formula, and they kept doing it because it works. And so I think it's because it was like 2 years out from the last really, really good movie that I was like, hey, yeah, good. This was a good movie. I mean, give or take a couple here and there are arguably. But yeah, I overall enjoyed my time in the theater. This is kind of a first, I think, for us in a while, where all three of us basically have the same exact mood and feel. And I'm gonna guess that we can pretty much pick apart the exact same things in this movie. I'll go first. And it has 5 letters. What is it?
MODOK.
Yeah.
Womp, 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 womp,
I
womp.
I wanted that to be so awesome, and honestly, they're up into like the intro of him was there was a middle part, like the beginning and the end of Modoc's story was terrible. The middle, there was an interesting tiny bit in the middle that if they had done that more in the beginning, but like overall, I was like, oh no, why is it Darren? Why, like, you can make it Darren, but like, why is he this person? This was not who he was. I don't understand what's happening here. And he was also the prime example of overworked CGI artists when he didn't have his mask on. Like that face looked weird. And it's a giant head, so it's gonna look weird. But MODOK for me was one of my biggest wah wah wah.
Yeah.
Missed out on the chance to use Patton Oswalt. If you were going to go this direction with his character as comedic relief, why didn't you just ask Patton Oswalt to come in?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
It was interesting to tie it in, with the previous, villain, but he was just so lame, and this guy was the same guy who was also lame,
Yeah.
and this to me was like a shut the fuck up. We're gonna put him in a movie, but this is all you're gonna get. Now stop complaining about no lack of MODOK, and now he's dead, so no more like not only like is this a potential like huge, like not quite the level of Thanos level threat, but easily could be, as he is portrayed in the comics sometimes, just reduced to a fucking less than a sidekick, like like an afterthought, and that's disappointing. And it's literally them being like, "Shut up! Now he was there. Now he's dead. You're not gonna get him ever again." So I really like. What was even the point? Like, I did think it was fascinating how they reminded us how he like got shrunk, how it was like chunks at a time. So that explained like the kind of like why he was proportioned that way in a way.
Sure.
Fine, that was something, but like they just made it like, don't be a dick. It's like,
oh my god, that line was
well, you know
so
what?
bad.
I think the thing is that like, I hate to say it, is I feel like they wanted to bring Darren Cross back one way or another, whether it was in MODOK form or not. Well, because it's like Cassie's like bully, that arch nemesis that she faced when she was a child. It's like it's about her childhood trauma and about being able to beat the guy who scared her as a child. Yes, it is, dude. Like that's obviously why they brought him back. He could have been anybody. Why did they bring Darren Cross back? Is because it ties up Cassie's story.
That wasn't the thing until they made it a line of dialogue in this.
Right, that's the reason why they did it, though. Like, they brought it back because it's like, this is the girl this is the person that tried to kill her when she was a kid.
This wasn't a thing until that line of dialogue, and even then it's supremely forced in, and you're just like, wait, now we're supposed to care all of a sudden? This has never been said or mentioned once before at all. And then it's like, no, like it's like everything about him was forced into this movie, and not a single thing fit, including his head into the helmet, which I guess is the point. It was,
I mean, they
like,
did
why?
foreshadow he was going to come back, because she did talk about getting like held hostage by a man dressed as a bee before they got shrunk down. You know, they threw in like a foreshadowed line, you know.
If you hadn't put him in there as MODOK, that wouldn't be a foreshadowing line. It would just be a callback, which is like cool. That's what Marvel movies are just callbacks to other Marvel movies.
I think he would have been fine coming back, but just not as MODOK. Like, he could have just been Darren and been like, "Ha, I've been here, and I actually have been trying to help Kang get the fuck out because you guys screwed me." If he just came back as normal Darren, it would have been okay, actually.
I completely agree.
No, I just
why did he have to be MODOK? I don't understand.
Why did he have to come back?
Like,
he was a throwaway character. He was one of the worst villains in Marvel history. He had no charisma, no character. He had no drive. He had nothing.
Are you not?
Why bring him back?
Are you not seeing like the big picture of what they're doing? They're trying to set up Young Avengers, so they need to develop Cassie's character as something of a person or an identity, or do something for her, just so that she has some kind of background, like where her motivations are. Look look how different of a character she is from who she is now to who we even saw her in Endgame. Okay, it's almost like it is a completely different actress. Yes, but she had like a few moments at Endgame, so you didn't even really see her. So they had to fill in all this story and all this background for this new character who they're going to introduce. And I was going to say, I mean, I'm going to jump the gun a little about how it ends, but she right now is quote unquote on a front runner spot to take over as the leader of the Young Avengers, dude. Like, because of, in my opinion, because of a lot of behind the scenes things, because she's a very like up and coming young actress. Like,
sure.
Oh, all right, I guess. That's an excellent point, George. Didn't really consider that, and that helps, but it doesn't change the fact that everything about that was just like,
yes, it felt forced. I understand.
This mechanized organism designed for killing, like, all of a sudden couldn't really hang against this girl who seemingly like has barely used this suit, and she's just kind of has to. That is a good point, but it was poorly executed, and at least there's a reasoning for everything that happened.
MODOK, I understand, is like he was made there. He was put in there for like a bit of obviously for comic relief, but also I think a lot of it is like this movie is a combination of a lot of different types of films that we like, genres that we've seen, right? You could say it's Alice in Wonderland, it's like Wizard of Oz, it's like, you know, it's Star Wars, sure. And MODOK is Vader. Like that whole scene of him coming together, that was totally a nod to Vader. Are you fucking serious? It's even shot in that same light.
Darth Vader.
It's even the same light. Are you fucking kidding me? If that was not a nod to Vader being put together with Hayden Christensen and a little poke at Disney and being able to do that in Star Wars, then I don't know what the fuck it was, okay? Because that was obviously a Vader joke.
Call it a poke or a joke. Don't call it a nod. A nod is like saying, "Hey, this is our
dude.
Darth
I'm not
Vader."
gonna fuck with you with terminology, all right? I'm not gonna fight with you with semantics on the podcast, all right? Just you know what I meant, okay?
Words. That's the whole point of it.
A nod or whatever. A callback, whatever we want to call it. It's obviously a point that they were trying to put at Vader.
I will concede.
It's even shot in the same way as it. All the lighting and the coming together of the machines. Come on. If you didn't see that, then you're not a Star Wars fan. I'm sorry.
I saw it, but it's not. I wouldn't call it a nod.
Oh, right. That explains it. I didn't see it, so that explains that.
There you go.
I wouldn't call it a nod.
Then what would you call it?
Then what would you call it?
A poke or a jab. Not a nod. A nod is like a courtesy, a nice thing to say. They were not saying a nice thing. They were being
then it's a poke. All right. My point is they were referencing. How about that? They were referencing Star Wars in that, and they were referencing Vader in that scene.
Yes.
Okay.
Fine. Fair. Moving on from the terrible part of MODOK, I think the decent part, other than the scenes that she had with MODOK, I think I enjoyed Cassie's character arc. I enjoyed the introduction of her character, just because compared to, say, America Chavez or some of these other younger characters that were wedged into movies, she actually had a character. She had more to do with the story than half of these other people. So I enjoyed it. I would call it on my slightly better than MODOK list of things to do here. She was good. I enjoyed her what she brought to it, and I enjoyed seeing her and Scott together, like Scott being a dad. That was kind of cool. A good progression for him. I get that with the choices that they made for the film, overall, because it was, a blend of like Scott Lang comedy and him doing semi-mature things, which was nice, because you need to have Paul Rudd be Paul Rudd, but the character needs to go somewhere, and they did that with that character, I think, fairly well in this. It's not the best part of this movie, which we'll get to in a little bit here, but that was one of my things that I thought was kind of nice coming out of it. That was a thought I had leaving the theater. It was like, it's cool to see him be a dad for a little while, a real dad, not just I brought my kid this terrifying toy like in the first one, that creepy fucking bunny, which would have been great if that made an appearance, but they had to pull out the B line with Darren. So
I miss the Wombats, dude. Where were the Wombats? Where's the team? I miss the guys, dude.
Wombats?
Yeah, Scott's friends, dude.
Oh, yeah.
The three dudes, dude. I need the three dudes, the Wombats. You call them Wombats.
we needed a summation of what happened like since Endgame. Like, oh yeah, then we bought the thing, and then we
Yeah,
went over
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. He's like a
that's-
jukebox, man. You put a quarter in him, you gotta listen to the song. You gotta play it all the way
I
through.
knew it was
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
was fine with
I
that.
miss, I miss those guys. That's all I'm gonna say. One
Dave
of them is the
Dismalchin?
voice of Holes,
Yeah.
of the slime guy.
Yeah,
The Russian guy is the voice of the slime guy.
Mm.
So
Otherwise known
he's
as,
kind of they should have done voices for all of those creatures because it would have been funny, kind of like very Wizard of the Oz, like, oh my god, Auntie, like you were there and you were there, like, and all three of them are like,
Sure.
huh?
I don't know. It was very formulaic, and it was, Tim says the Marvel formula works. They do the formula regardless, and it doesn't always work, and this time it works. So it's just kind of
has
like
a little bit.
It still has every moment of like, oh, God, all right, this, like, you had your Han Solo moment when everyone rides in. Actually, there were two of those. There were two moments where things swooped in to save them.
Yes.
Like all the rebels, and then the ants and then you're just like, I mean, admittedly, the ants was pretty
fucking cool.
It was pretty badass, especially just because the way Michael Douglas just
just like,
and you're
just
like
chill. You're like, yeah, dude,
Let's go, Ant-Man.
That was great. Not to get a little chills over that, but it's I don't know. It worked. Obviously, something we don't almost ever say. Good villain.
Oh,
really good villain.
fantastic.
And fuck, it feels good to say that.
So
and it
good.
made me realize that we didn't really have a lot of, almost at all, if any, interaction with Thanos leading up to the final two movies. And I am so glad we got to know him, and that line that he has with Michelle Pfeiffer's character, he is who I need to be.
Ooh, good.
So good. And it's that single line like speaks so much to his character's motivation and what he wants to accomplish. And I love that. And admittedly, I'm a little like, I know this doesn't mean anything, and he is literally the master of time, but it's like he's dead. Like, I don't obviously.
Let's get
obviously.
to that.
Okay, we'll wait. I'll wait on
yeah.
that then.
We're jumping ahead. I want to talk about some other characters first because we'll spend the rest of this time talking about Kang, and Michelle Pfeiffer should be talked about a little bit because
with Kang, yeah, sure.
I mean, she was solid. I mean, she came in and she did Michelle Pfeiffer.
She does not surprise me because she's
know?
just freaking amazing. Like,
Michael Douglas was good, and with Michael Douglas, you can get, or you can get Michael Douglas, and we got Michael Douglas, which was good because
maybe in the last few there was a little
more.
bit of meh for Michael Douglas. This one he really got to shine
for Michael Douglas.
No,
I'm not saying he was like, but he was.
He did really well this time. He did really well this time.
The dynamic was good.
When has he not done well? Well, he's always done.
He's always done well.
Some of the other movies lately, there's just been some phone-ins and stuff. So there's clips I've seen, not really full movies, because I'm not out there going, I want to see the next Michael Douglas movie, but I was at one point. But Michelle Pfeiffer, I liked. I wanted a little more, I think, in the end from her. Just like more scenes, more time, and because I liked it because they did that whole thing between like her and Hope was kept wanting to talk about like what was going on in the quantum realm, and like they did that like distant motherly thing that the 1,000 movies have done, and I don't want to talk about my time down there and like all that. And I think they did a good job using that and building up. That was the build up for Kang and the final reveal. Like you saw him a little in the beginning when he kind of falls out of his ship and he's all like, where am I? And then like, when you finally get to kind of see who he is and you learn the backstory between him and Michelle Pfeiffer, I thought that was super fascinating.
Yeah.
We didn't really get a ton of Evangeline Lilly. Does that seem accurate? Like, the scene she was in was just kind of her quibbling with her mom, and then a couple of fight scenes, and like think of a couple more. I can't really think of that many scenes with Evangeline Lilly.
There may have been reason to that. Granted, what was going on behind the scenes and her lack of willing to follow protocols with COVID.
That's
Oh
true.
yeah,
She might not have
I
shot
heard
as
something.
many.
I didn't read all about it though.
I
Well,
don't know that for a fact, but that could be an explanation.
it could be.
Okay, I'm not mad
It
at
was
it.
just hard to
I think
for.
the movie was
She did
fine.
fine though. Like it was
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah.
I'm not.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Damn it, I had something else that
Can
I
we
thought
talk
was
about the
worth
big BM
mentioning.
dude?
Big BM.
Bill Murray, dude.
Oh, like
Yeah.
the big bad manners.
The big BM, Bill Murray, dude. Come on.
The stories
Zombieland.
that came out with Bill Murray in the last year, that moment felt a little bit more like a than a
They did a
pow.
lot. They did a lot of
Too on the
fanfare. They did
nose.
a lot of fanfare to introduce this guy. A lot of fanfare. I
Yeah.
feel. You know what I'm saying? Dan was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god." Dan was like, "Oh."
Yeah, no, it was what it needed to be. He wasn't in it for any longer than he needed to be. And
No, yeah. He was
yeah,
just Bill Murray. That was it. That was just him doing it what he always does, and then in a
I've
Marvel
always
film. That
liked
was it.
him more as like a slightly serious kind of character, and he kind of leaned into that. You know,
At
that
the
was
end.
kind of more what the character was. Yeah,
At the end,
after
yes.
the reveal of him being evil, he kind of did that fairly well. Again, it was a 2-minute scene, but he did it
in
well.
many ways,
so.
it made it a little bit more creepier because he was like the typical Bill Murray coming off that ship, right? And then when things got dark, he was like, "Did she tell you the truth? Did she tell you that she like is responsible for like all these people getting killed, all of our friends dying, like?" You know, and that scene was like that added a lot of gravity to it, and you could see it on Janet's face, and you could see it. Michelle Pfeiffer played it so well off of him, of this like just absolute dread, you know, and like that you could feel her stomach drop, and like her family's looking at her with this judgment of like, what, like not judgment, but like questions, you know. Even though Hope is saying she doesn't believe him, but you know that Hope, you know, that the seed's been planted, the inception, you know, like it's growing, like she already is questioning her mom.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny. She calls him Henry. I was like, who the fuck is Henry?
Henry.
Henry Pym, Hank Pym.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's no more delaying it. Dan mentioned it. He was Kang, Jonathan fucking Majors, just knocking it out of the park for me. Like, and again, we've said this 1,000 times, and we'll say it 1,000 more. Like, some of these best superhero movies that you'll see, comic book movies, are the ones that have the better villains, and I think this one was built around that. It really, Kang was menacing in a way that few can do, where it was just, he didn't have to show this giant bravada, this huge show of force to feel like he was a powerful individual. Like, just the way he spoke to everyone, and like even when he was talking to Scott, like after they got the core for his little quantum ship, just quantum everything, because science, and we'll just put quantum in front of everything. He, Scott was going to give it to him, but they were telling him not to, and he just looks at him and goes, "Do I have to take it?" And I was just like, ooh. That was just the way he said it, and the way the look on his face got a little bit more serious. Just the little nuances that he brings to this character. Seeing how, comparing it to He Who Remained, like, just to see that this same version, a different version of that person, that individual, it was cool for me. I really, really liked Kang in this version of Kang. And spoilers if you weren't aware of all of our episodes. He dies apparently at the end, as spoken in some of the end credit scenes. But for me, they said it. The other versions said it, so I'm fine with it. We'll get into that. But
well, Scott is also movie. Like, is he dead? I don't really know. Like, I don't think so.
Would he know the difference?
No, like, exactly.
Like,
but we don't either.
Kang and this Kang.
Yeah, of course. I think so. I think the Kang seem distinctly different enough.
Maybe.
Yeah, the thing is that bums me out a little, and I know it doesn't mean anything. Like, we could easily see this Kang back, but like, God, seeing him in full costume gave me goosebumps. And it felt like, God, it feels so early to see like fucking Kang like in his costume, and now I obviously we could see him again. But like I couldn't help but feel a little sad, like that we're not going to see. I mean, there's something about seeing these characters from the comics come to life on screen in their full costume, and how awesome, and how it is probably one of the more goofy costumes, but it's
Worked.
still, yeah, it was so great. It
So
still
great.
looked so, it was so, it fit the world he was in, and I love seeing it, and I'm a little bummed that we might not see him, or at least this Kang in that costume for a while. But again, so many unanswered questions, so many things up in the air. We'll see what happens. Either way, they got me hooked, and I'm intrigued to see how it plays out.
Yeah, George.
I think one of the things that I mentioned to Dan almost immediately after the film about Kang that I was very curious about is like when he crash landed into the quantum realm and met Janet. Who did he introduce himself as, if not Kang? What was his name?
Nathaniel Richards.
Do you think that's do you think he introduced himself as Nathaniel?
He didn't say it,
and he's not even
never
credited as that in the credits. I looked.
But that's who he is.
That is who he is. Right.
Kang,
so it's very
Nathaniel
interesting
Richards.
is that like when he introduced himself, because she obviously knows her name is Janet, so it's not like you know, like common courtesy, like my name's Janet, your name is.
We didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I am a little curious as to.
Doesn't mean that it did.
Yeah, doesn't mean it did, and I'm also curious as to where she is on like, he is on like, okay, quantum, because quantum time wise, it's like they play it very fast and loose about how the way things pass and like how many years pass and things like that. Like time is very weird, there, right? It makes no sense there, right? It's very, they play no rules whatsoever. Very fast and loose.
Consistent with it.
Yeah, not consistent with it. Exactly. So I'm also curious as to, because of that, like where this Kang that we've met, where is he on the evolution of like Nathaniel's timeline? Do you know what I'm saying? And what's funny is Nathaniel's story is circular. Like he keeps going back, you know? So like I just am curious where this Kang, when we meet him, where he is in the circle, kind of.
I mean, anybody who's watched Doctor Who will tell you that it doesn't really matter where he is in his circle. And he'll probably tell you the same thing, that it doesn't matter when you can see
he's
time
still
the way he does.
He's still the same person.
So for those of you who don't know, I will do my best to not spoil anything, but we will talk about the end credits, which will give a little bit more.
Yeah, this is what it comes to.
Kang. But Kang's name is Nathaniel Richards from the 31st century, who is a direct descendant of Sue and Reed Richards. So he is a very distant relative. You know, I don't know exactly which.
Obviously,
on the
several
timeline,
generations.
It becomes so, you know, diluted at that point. But he comes back into time many different times, many different occasions, and many different versions of him come in it. And we've seen, before we get into the end credits, we've seen several different versions of him already. We've seen a lot of them do still go by Kang, and a lot of them go by other names. But we saw He Who Remains, who is a new version, an MCU version of him, which I thought was a nice little thing to kind of play with us and temper it. And then this version of Kang, which we saw in Quantumania. Anyone who saw the end credit scenes saw 300 different versions of him in different costumes, which we can get into the main three, which, oh, now I know who that was, which makes it so much more fascinating. Okay, fuck it. The end credit scene, the first one, was the three Kangs talking about how the what's his name? What did they call him? The banished one was killed, right? They said he's dead.
He's
I feel it.
the banished one, yeah.
Right, that's what they're talking about. The one in the background was dressed up like a pharaoh, who I did not realize until this very second is the very first 1963 Fantastic Four number, I want to say 14, maybe 8, I can't remember. Was Farah Tut was his name, and he was a version of Kang who went back in time to take over ancient Egypt and rule through that, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't until 1964 when he was officially introduced in Avengers number 8 as Kang the Conqueror with his classic costume and everything like that. So we got to see the original version on screen, which I didn't realize. And then you had two other versions who I didn't recognize. one who talked real funny, and the other who maybe was like the Centurion. Was that his
Maybe
name? I don't
Red
know.
Centurion.
Uh, yeah, and they were talking about how
I think one of
Jesus.
them is Mortis.
Yeah, one of them
One
could
is
be
Immortus,
Immortus.
one is Tut, and then the other one could be Centurion. But the Centurion is technically supposed to be a good guy, kind of. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's
It's
there's
but
so
either way, it's
many in
another
this.
Kang. Either way, it's another Kang.
Yeah.
But the thing is their story is they always keep coming back to, like, you know that rule in Back to the Future where you shouldn't talk to yourself from the past or the future. They never fucking follow that rule, and that is the impetus that keeps making Kang go back in time in every single timeline. Is that the Nathaniel Richards met a future Kang who came to his timeline and was like, there's time traveling, but he's like, oh, okay, and then he looks into his past, his like lineage, and realizes how to use time travel technology, goes back to Egypt, and it becomes a whole circle again. That's the thing, is the impetus. He is his own impetus, and that's what's so interesting about Kang's character is he creates himself. He's a paradox. He is literally a time paradox in a single person, and that is why he has so many variants and so many different identities. And in many ways, he's a Nexus like individual, just like Wanda is. In many ways, like there's just so many weird shit that always happens to that individual, no matter what universe it is, because he always travels back in time to meet his former self, kind of,
So
and to like
that leads
that leads me
my
to
biggest
question, where is he right now? Like, where is he in that circle? Did he die, or did they send him back in time?
I mean, I think he's dead. I'm going out on a limb, and I think the one we met, was dead. And if you saw in that scene at the end credits, there were many others wearing the
Many
same
others.
costume. So we could still see something that's really close to this character and just have some tweaks to it, or someone who's a little bit more. I'm guessing the next invasion Kang will be a little bit more angry and aggressive, is my guess, but still similar. I don't know, Dan.
I can't take it anymore. That leaves me. Which identity was the final end credit scene? Who were we seeing?
Victor
Loki.
Timely.
Or
So
are they
Victor
all
Timely is Kang from I can tell you, I got it all right here.
All right.
Where'd it go? He's basically a version of him that set up base in 1901 in he founded a town called Timely, Wisconsin, named after himself. And he would use it as like a little base to go back in time and like develop older technologies to again try and root himself in Earth's 616 to slowly take it over and stuff like that. But what he would do is then step through a door in his office, because he was the mayor at one point, and be back in what was in the comic books called Chronopolis, which is his giant flying city. In this one, it's whatever they're calling it, because they're going with quantum instead of chrono and all that stuff. But essentially, they're all. I want to say he's still Earth 616, but just the one that went. They're all the ones in the
They're all
comics.
the same.
A lot of them are the same. We're just
at
seeing
different
them
points
at
in
different
the circle.
time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what's
because-
amazing. Is for all we know, those three guys that we saw are all the same 616, just different times of Kang
You
and
won't
showing
see
up.
them all at this. Oh, I guess you.
Do you know what I'm
could.
saying?
God,
They're just coming to
time
the
travel is
council.
fucking weird.
Yeah,
and
because it's a
confusing.
circle for him. For all we know, he's always going to become that Kang that got banished. And they just banished a different version of him, the last quote unquote version of himself. Think about that. Like, that's really like that's what's interesting about his character, is that he, for all we know, those last three Kangs are just the same one in a different point in the circle.
I guess he actually never. I'm looking at it now. He never was from Earth 616. He's from an alternate universe as well. I think 616 never technically had its own Kang, and they're all from a different universe in the future, which makes it even more confusing. And for me,
much to unpack with this character.
The way I see a lot of this, because anytime someone says, "Oh, it involves time travel," I'm like, "Cool, I'm just gonna let it go," like fuck it. Like they did it. They explained every fan's thoughts in Endgame when they're like, "Oh, like what do you know about time travel?" And they're like, "Oh, like Back to the Future, like Time Cop, like this," because they're all there's nothing we actually know about time
Yeah.
travel, and everyone makes up their own rules. So it's
I
it's
loved it
whatever
though.
at this
They
point.
did a really good job of demonstrating like alternate, like multi-string, theory with like every decision, every possibility is a different reality, and like they did a very good job of visualizing it in a way that I thought was like actually made a lot of sense. But like in theory, that's kind of what it would be like. But I thought it was very neat they decided to do that. I was surprised because I thought like, and then the way they tied it into the story, I guess it was just very clever. I don't know, I liked it, like because
Yeah,
they all had like
Well,
the same goal at the end.
I like that. If you watch any of our old reviews about a lot of these movies, like they did not invoke this much conversation out of us.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them
Even
were just us
Baskin
shitting
Robbins
on the
was there,
movie,
dude. Baskin Robbins Scott
which I
was
thought was funny.
there. I
I
was
thought
like,
that was kind
he's
of
like, what are
funny.
we doing here?
I liked that little shout
Baskin
out.
Robbins.
I liked the comedy. I liked the blend. This is what a
It was a
blended
pretty good
comedic
blend.
movie, a comedic Marvel movie should be. You look at Thor: Love and Thunder, and like the first half is nothing but slapstick comedy for the first 45 minutes to an hour, and the
Well, there was
last like
Guardians.
30 minutes of that movie is trying to be dead serious, and then the screaming goat comes in, and you're like, what the fuck formula? What are you doing? Like, tell me a story and pepper in jokes. Don't focus on jokes and then tell me a story. That's not a movie. That's a fucking sketch show or something
I like
weird.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
This
I had needs,
this
Hank.
did a good job.
I was like, she's like,
Like
Shannon's
that
like,
was so
oh my
funny.
god.
Now,
She's like,
again,
please.
you shouldn't have lines like Darren, don't be a dick. Like that made no sense for the character so that we met so far.
yeah,
That was really stupid, and it really for that moment I was like, I'm not in a Marvel movie. I'm in a blooper reel for a moment. Like
I know.
it seemed
they are
really weird.
losing their comedy edge, and
Yeah.
this movie was no exception to that. Thank God this movie was good, because when they shoehorned in the comedy, I was just like fucking Krusty the Clown over.
I
Like
did like I did like the moments where when everyone was introduced to who MODOK was, like each character learned that it was Darren, they went, Darren? Like, wait, what? Just like we did when we first saw him. Wait, what? Like it just I
hated it,
thought that was
dude.
kind of entertaining. It was not needed, but it was better for me. This was better than a lot of their previous attempts in the last 2 years at a comedic type movie because I mean it's fucking Paul Rudd. It's wit, it's timing,
Right,
it's funny,
right.
and it's good, and it's it's not the
It,
focus of the movie. It was a little over the top at moments though.
it did still kind of work for him, but I don't know. I guess there were moments that were kind of worked, but for the otherwise, I felt like it's just like stop. You don't need to force in the jokes. Like it's been complained about before, but to me, it never really started being painful until the last like couple years. I don't know. Like that was the one thing that still felt like the previous phase to me.
Mhm.
There are a few other things, but this felt like a mix of like there was still some previous phase aspects, but enough like that weren't that made it a good movie
Yeah.
to me. I don't know. All I can think about is right now. All I can think about is I'm doing the math here, and since 4 years was 7 hours for Scott Lang, like that should have been approximately 56 hours for Michelle Pfeiffer. And she done age that whole time. So
It
I
was
don't
like
know.
30 years and it's like, well
Yeah.
then it would be like it would be the 31st century by the time
It,
she actually left,
she also would look, the same, like as
Well,
she went in there.
let me break that up a little bit here for you. It's because they entered at a different point in time and pulled her out instead of
And went
like if
back to the
she
same
had left.
spot.
Yeah, if she had left on her own accord, it probably would be the 31st century when she steps out of it. But since they went in and pulled out at almost the same moment, using a machine designed to do so, they can then have her age, but time not pass as much in our realm.
I don't know.
It's their logic, not mine. Anyway, I want to read this real quick. It's like two sentences. Um This is an article by The Vulture. I don't know who wrote it, but it says essentially Victor Timely is Kang's means to his to self-fulfillment. He becomes a time traveler because he traveled through time and created the technology that would allow him to do so. George's point. But as far as the comics go, Timely isn't a variant of Kang. He is Kang. He's a disguise of Kang. If this holds true for the MCU, then Timely is in fact the same person as the exiled one at a different point in time, which then means we saw the end of him, but our future could be that Kang's past.
Oh shit! He did say multiple times he's defeated multiple Avengers.
Yeah, that's where he got his scars from.
We may see, spoilers, fan theory, wild internet speculation, he may kill Thor in Kang Dynasty.
Yeah.
Because he said he's killed
so many,
the one with the hammer, and so many of these different Avengers. So we may see people from, you know, the last few remaining original Avengers die in the Kang Dynasty. So we might still get the exiled one, because Kang Dynasty is this character. Man, I love the fact that I watched Doctor Who, because this really helps me figure all of this shit out.
It's a circle, dude.
We met him at his end.
He is a paradox. And look, and Timely did not have the scars. If you look, Timely doesn't have the facial scars that he doesn't have the scars that Kang did. So it seems like Timely is just the earlier version of the Kang that we met, and he's just a circle. I really, really would not be surprised if those three guys are just the same person in the different point in time.
Oh, man,
maybe that
they chose to banish themselves. The really bad version of themselves. Though. That is the Council of Kangs.
And they are different Kangs from different universes.
Okay.
Kangs in the comics. Fuck if I know what's going on.
Yeah, fuck if I know.
The question is, how would they know if they were a variant or just a Kang in a different time period?
To them, it doesn't mean any difference.
Is Kang's only actual superpower, if you want to break it down, is hyper intelligence. That's it. He's a human being. He is not an alien. He does not have super strength.
That's what I said to Dan too. Everything he has is stolen, kind of, or not stolen, but it's created by somebody else. He took it from somebody else and made it into his own.
Created a lot of it. He
created in many ways, because he went back in time, because his future self told him to go back in time. Like, it's a circle. Like This Kang that we saw has a lot of technology from different types of civilizations. It looks like he cobbled together a lot of stuff. Not only stuff that he made. There's obviously some form of Stark tech in there. There's obviously some form of celestial technology. There's obviously some kind of quantum technology similar to the bands that Shang-Chi has, and the bracelet that Ms. Marvel has, which is probably some kind of Kree technology or something weird similar to that.
That's quantum. Whoa. Back up a second here. Did they say Shang-Chi's rings are quantum technology?
Look at his rings, dude. And do you not see the similarities between that and the rings of the engine and then of the core and all the things that Kang powers?
Say it.
Look at the symbols that Janet moved in that room that was like open the door. Those symbols look very similar to the celestial symbols. Like the technology that is down on the quantum level has a lot of similar glyphs to like celestial energy, and very similar to what we saw in the 10 Rings, and very similar to what we saw in Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you remember the end scene credit of Shang-Chi? We're sending a signal. A signal to where?
Oh my god. Oh nice, my George. God, dude.
Nice. Man.
Fucking A. Yeah,
this Shang-Chi, this thing, they couldn't even date it. That was how old it is. Why couldn't they date something? He's supposed to be Sorcerer Supreme, and he couldn't date the freaking rings, something older than he could figure out. They had no record of it because it's not from our universe. It's from the quantum universe. It's not even from our reality. It's from the quantum universe. That's quantum technology from the quantum universe. And Kang has somehow cobbled together all the stuff to create his platform. He steals technology from other cultures and puts it together and sends it back in time to himself to create it so that he has it in the future. And that is why he's such a diabolical villain, is because it's just a circle for him. It doesn't matter where he shows up in the timeline for him. He's always going to fucking kick ass because it doesn't matter. You're never going to fucking get rid of him. And that's like I think the paradox of that
Okay,
character.
let me bring this question up. If the Kang we see, and I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of other invasion from the Council of Kangs, but like if we see this version of Kang in future movies, Victor Timely being this version of Kang as well, like we know how he ends technically, if that stands true. If this Kang died right now in Quantumania, and we see him again in the future, that's going to lead us to believe, like, how does that story end? He can't die again because he already died here. Because if this is the end of his thread, whichever direction it goes, then are they going to do like a
My
proper,
theory
like,
is
oh, we've defeated him and sent him back and took away his technology, but he still eventually finds a way to come back and then
exactly
die again
my
in
belief
Quantumania.
is that
Does that make sense?
he didn't die. He got sent back in
Yeah.
time. My belief is he didn't die. He got stranded back in time, and maybe they pushed him back either to Egypt or to Victor Timely's time or whatever it is. But they sent
He
him
would
back.
have the scars.
He would
God,
have the
this is
scars. So I
confusing.
think they sent him back in time, but maybe back to the time of Egypt or whatever. And I would with the story
But
that
then
he
he would
has
be
and
the
his
guy.
story that involves him and Apocalypse and all the mutants and all that stuff, like it leads to a great, like, interesting path. Because what if they send him back in time? What if he's the one who created mutants? And what if all that is just just more stuff for Kang to be like dip his fingers into, because he's such a diabolical, like,
But
main
we already
villain of the
saw
story.
Ramatut. We saw that Kang already.
Right.
So are they going to really do two of them? I don't think
Or he's the
Marvel is
same
going
one.
to want to do.
Because he lives in a circle, dude. Or he's the same one.
So then what? The one that we saw in the first end credit with when he looked like a pharaoh is this version of Kang that was sent back in time and is plotting against the rest of them?
Yeah,
Is agreeing that he died because he
they
is him and
always want to
pretending to take
kill
over?
the last version of Kang. They always want to kill. They don't care that it's him. They don't care if that it's me in the future. To them, that doesn't mean shit. They think that this end version of Kang is so bad that they always want to get rid of him. And it doesn't matter because he always gets sent back in a circle and it always comes to the decision and he always makes the same decision. And that is the problem with Kang too. In many ways, Kang is his own problem. If Kang didn't exist, I don't think there would be a quote unquote, a war, right? He's the one. He even admits that himself. He's the one who causes the war, is because the other versions of himself inevitably go to war against himself in different timelines. That's just how it always ends for it, And because he's the paradox, in order to remove the problem, they have to get rid of the Kang in every single form and fashion. In every reality, in every branch, in every single universe, they need to get rid of that one of Kang and burn him out of existence the way they did with Ultron. Like, and that's that thought in vain. And I think that would be the only way to defeat Kang, is to defeat every single version of him in every single circle of the timeline, because that's the only way to cure the paradox, right? He causes the timeline war. He causes the war between all the realities. But if there was no Kang in any reality, would there be? Who knows?
I don't know, man.
Incursions
I like
might
it.
still happen. Who knows?
I like that we actually have theory now,
direction,
because I don't feel like a lot of the other movies that came out had a theory, had a direction, and that's, call it what it was. It was an introductory phase. Phase 4 was, your multiverse thing, but finally it feels like it is now. But it was all that first Phase 4 did was introduce new characters. That was it. That was
they
the
tried a
whole
lot of new
point
things, and some
it.
of them
And
worked,
that's
some of them
fine.
didn't.
So going forward, I think we are all very intrigued to see what they do. There's a lot of possibilities that can happen with Kang, especially we know we're getting a Fantastic Four, we know we're getting a Secret Wars, we know we're getting, Secret Invasion. We're getting a lot of different things that are going to happen, and it's all, for me, this is the first proper stepping stone to kind of put them in place. So I'm excited. Again, not excited. I'm always excited for more Marvel movies, but that's me because that's who I am. I am just happy that I can read my comic books and then go watch them on screen still. So, um,
This was good. This was a good
Yeah,
step.
this was a
But
good step.
y'all are acting like now everything's back on track after
It's
one
not,
movie.
because the next movie is Guardians of the Galaxy, and I am less than excited for that
Well,
movie.
you know,
So
the thing I will say about Guardians is that every single time I go into it with very low expectations, and I'm somewhat pleasantly surprised. That first one, I was like, what? And then I actually really liked that first one. The second one, no expectations, and it was somewhat enjoyable. I liked it for what it was.
I
Obviously,
liked it.
not
No
amazing,
problem.
but still good. So this one, I'm not gonna go into it with huge expectations, but still, like, they have surprised me kind of in the past, especially that first
Yes.
one.
Telling, yeah. So
Then that's
I'm
fine.
not overly excited about the Guardians because the storytelling is
This got way longer,
the
and we
same as
went on
before.
a tangent about Guardians that we really didn't need
So,
to.
ladies and gentlemen, if you've had a good time, thank you for watching. And we are the Modern Nerd.